Hillary Clinton is too much of a narcissist to admit that she lost the election to an easily beatable opponent because she ran a terrible campaign and shunned half of the Democratic base. So she is now taking the time to call out someone who she thinks helped cost her the election. Vladimir Putin. So let's go ahead and listen.
Vladimir Putin himself directed the covert cyber attacks against our electoral system, against our democracy, apparently because he has a personal beef against me. Putin publicly blamed me for the outpouring of outrage by his own people. And that is the direct line between what he said back then and what he did in this election. This is not just an attack against me and my campaign, although that may have added fuel to it. This is an attack against our country. We are well beyond normal political concerns here. This is about the integrity of our democracy and the security of our nation.
So obviously, I take issue with multiple things in there. So she said Vladimir Putin himself directed the covert cyber attacks against our electoral system, against our democracy, apparently because he has a personal beef against me. Okay, you have to be really careful with your language there, Hillary. She said that he directed covert cyber attacks against our electoral system. That implies that he did more than just release emails from John Podesta and the DNC. That implies that he actually rigged the election itself. Are you really going to suggest that, Hillary Clinton? Until you provide us with the evidence, that's just your opinion. WikiLeaks claims that the DNC was not hacked. They say that the information was leaked to them by a DNC insider. And furthermore, there's more evidence to suggest at this point that we've seen that John Podesta was the victim of a phishing scam. So to say that Vladimir Putin directed a covert attack on our electoral system, that's really, really troubling, because not only do you delegitimize the results of this election, but the implications of this are huge. I mean, this is something that we could go to war over. If somebody hacks the election of the United States, do you not think that that is an act of war and that the US government would view that as an act of war? So you're being very cavalier with your choice of words here. Now, second, you've saber-rattled against Russia for the entirety of your campaign, and you literally said that you want to respond to cyber attacks against foreign countries militarily. So if Vladimir Putin had a preference in this race and he didn't want you to win, maybe it's because he doesn't want to go to war with the United States. Now, I'm not justifying him potentially hacking the election, which is what you're calling it, but really it's just releasing emails from the DNC. But I'm not justifying that. I'm not justifying hacking or condoning it, but I'm telling you that you're a war hawk, you're a warmonger, and you've been saber-rattling against Russia for now more than a year. So if I were Vladimir Putin, yeah, I would think that maybe Hillary Clinton isn't the best choice because I don't want a nuclear war against a huge power. And then she said, this was not just an attack against me and my campaign. This is an attack against our country. No, this is actually a distraction against the substance of what was released in those emails. It revealed that you helped Debbie Wasserman Schultz rig the primary against Bernie Sanders. This revealed overt corruption. This revealed that you did favors for your donors that were donating to you millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation while you were Secretary of State. Hillary, that is overt corruption there. So why aren't we talking about that? Why aren't we talking about the substance? Because even if we can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Russia did leak these emails, specifically Vladimir Putin, that doesn't erase what you were caught doing. You were caught with your pants down. And you don't like that, so you want to create this distraction and want to blame Russia and risk war with Russia or a new Cold War, which is still problematic, all because you don't want to face the facts that you were exposed and we got confirmation that you were as corrupt as we thought you were. Now, the worst part in here to me was when she said, this is about the integrity of our democracy and the security of our nation. You've got to be fucking kidding me, Hillary Clinton. This is so aggravating. If you want to talk about the integrity of our democracy, great. Let's start with the primaries and how the DNC literally tailor-made a primary that would specifically benefit you, and that they rigged the debate schedule. They only did 6 debates, and then they banned candidates from participating in debates that weren't sanctioned by the DNC, and said if you participate in a CNN debate that the DNC doesn't approve of, well, you don't get into future debates. That would basically kill off their campaign. You moved red states up on the primary schedule because you're a more conservative candidate and you knew it would help you and give you an early lead, thus demoralizing the support base of whatever opponents you would have. You and your goons at the DNC created media narratives to smear Bernie Sanders and his supporters. You tried to smear him for being an atheist. You claimed that we're Bernie bros and that we got violent at the Nevada convention. And for some reason, you suspiciously benefited from voting irregularities that always seemed to harm Bernie Sanders. So in states where the exit polls were off and exceeded the margin of error, well, conspicuously, Hillary Clinton always benefited from that. The DNC literally changed the times of primaries in pro-Bernie districts. Bernie Sanders supporters were purged off the voting rolls. And I say Bernie Sanders supporters because in certain districts, well, the demographics just favored Bernie Sanders, and hundreds of thousands of people were purged off the voting rolls. This all benefited you, Hillary Clinton. So if you want to start talking about the integrity of our democracy, let's start with the primaries that you rigged and made you the illegitimate Democratic Party nominee. Now, I love how she also wants to laughably talk about the security of our nation, as if she cares about that. Well, great, I'm game. Let's start with your private email server that you installed in your house, which was literally unprecedented. No Secretary of State has ever done this before. Nobody literally set up a private email server so that way their private emails would not be subject to FOIA requests. You did this to hide your corruption, and then the conclusion of the FBI investigation showed that you did in fact send and receive classified information on your private email server. So you risked national security, in other words, all because you wanted to hide your corruption. And then you had the gall to blame James Comey when you should have been indicted before the primary was over. I mean, you've got a lot of nerve, Hillary Clinton. So that was honestly, when she said, let me read the quote again, "This is about the integrity of our democracy and the security of our nation." Yeah, you're a big hypocrite. And saying that you're a hypocrite, it doesn't do justice to the extent that you are a hypocrite. This is so aggravating. So I honestly was pissed off beyond belief when I heard this. Now, think about what she's doing here and why it's really hypocritical of her. So she's trying to delegitimize Donald Trump's win, even though throughout the election, when she thought she was going to win, she was worried that he would do the same thing to her and he wouldn't concede the race and delegitimize her win.
Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris, let me respond to that because that's horrifying. You know, every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him. The FBI conducted a year-long investigation into my emails. They concluded there was no case. He said the FBI was rigged. He lost the Iowa caucus. He lost the Wisconsin primary. He said the Republican primary was rigged against him. Then Trump University gets sued for fraud and racketeering. He claims the court system and the federal judge is rigged against him. There was even a time when he didn't get an Emmy for his TV program 3 years in a row, and he started tweeting that the Emmys were rigged against him.
Should have gotten it.
This is a mindset. This is how Donald thinks. And it's funny, but it's also really troubling.
So the implication here is that it's troubling to not accept the result of an election, not because that would have prevented Hillary Clinton from being sworn in, but because if half of the country does not believe that you're a legitimate president, well, that doesn't just make it more difficult for the president to govern, but it's actually really harmful for democracy if people don't buy into the fact that their leader actually is legitimate. And this is why many regimes collapse in foreign countries. But now that she lost, lost, she's trying to delegitimize Donald Trump, ironically, in the same exact way that she feared that he would have delegitimized her. That makes you a gigantic hypocrite, Hillary. So you cried all this time about him needing to accept the election results, and now that you lost, you don't want to accept the election results. You may have conceded, but you're doing everything you can to delegitimize Donald Trump. You don't even have to do that, okay? Most of the country voted against him. You won the popular vote. So I don't get what your goal is here. It looks like you're a sore loser. And if you really want to talk about why you lost the election, why don't you take some accountability for yourself? Stop blaming James Comey because he didn't force you to set up the private email server, and stop blaming Vladimir Putin because he didn't force you to rig the DNC or rig the Democratic primary. Blame yourself because you ran a terrible campaign and you ignored half of your base and you tried to court neoconservatives, Hillary. Blame yourself for that. You are the reason why you lost.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.